Iskadal v'iskadash me'ravo. Iskadal v'iskadesh. Iskadal v'iskadash me'ravo. Iskadal v'iskadesh. Yesh me'ravo. I mean Shemaya, Yehesh Me'iravo. I mean Shemaya. May the memories be great. May the memories be holy. May the ones who pass before us feel all the light that we bring. May our names be good. May their names be good. Welcome to the Joti show. Today is a special edition about Yom Hashoah in honor of metabolizing grief. I, as a Jewish woman, remember those who walked before Yom Hashoah as the day that we remember the Holocaust. My grandfather, Benno Kurz, he was a survivor of the Holocaust, and my family was a lot of them perished in the Holocaust, and so I hold this day with a lot of reverence, and I also sit with the question of how to metabolize this grief. And just wanting to say hello to you. I'm an NLP practitioner. I'm a spiritual mentor. If you're needing support right now, PM me. I'd love to be of support. And I'd also love to just share with you what we're going to be doing today. My dear friend Ariel Vagozin, otherwise known as Trixie Lamont, will be coming on soon. And in the meantime, I would like to share with you a beautiful poem from my friend Ray Abalea. And she really spoke beautifully to what I'm feeling. And this is an abridged version of it. Yom Hashoah 5780, which begins this evening. I am Lisa, welcome. We can, I'm just beginning with a poem. I just began it. Hi.
Hi.
And Lisa, I'm just beginning with a poem. I just began it, and I'll begin it again, that Ray Abalea wrote. And I'm super grateful that you're joining. And Ariel Vagozin is going to be coming on as well. I'll share a little bit about Lisa after I read the poem, if that's okay, Lisa. So her poem goes like this: Yom Hashoah 5780. We will not gather in synagogues to say Kaddish for you this year. We light candles in our homes as we shelter in place. And perhaps we sit with the pain of recalling the Holocaust rather than rush around from work to family, from Zoom to Zoom. Sit with it. The word genocide is built from side, killing, of a genos, a race, or tribe, or kind of people, which comes from the root word gene, which means to give birth. In these pandemic times, trauma awakens like the sleeping bear, emerging from winter hibernation. The bear was never gone, just lumbering in a dark cave. Trauma. We worry constantly. We hoard toilet paper and canned foods. We feel an insatiable hunger that rattles around even when our bellies are full. We can't see who is actually most vulnerable. We're hyper vigilant. We overreact. We panic. We can't slow down. We drive after perfection even when Diana would be enough. We assume that bad things will happen and predict the worst. We become numb to what is happening, overwhelmed by the death toll. We feel guilty if we are okay. Survivor's guilt runs strong. Survivor's guilt when so many are ill and out of work. How am I doing okay? I shouldn't be okay. The pandemic is a portal, says Arundhati, a doorway to change our lives. About the Shoah, they only taught me to remember the pain. I can definitely relate to this, the suffering, the attack on our people, how we were victims. They didn't tell me about the hidden gems, sparkling and gleaming just below the surface. I dive deep now to resurrect them. The resilience, the courage, the creativity, the songs. I touch my own skin and it tells me that before there was any harm, there was miracle, says Adrienne Marie. Day by day, as I sit in my house under quarantine, I excavate the voices of my people who cry out in hopeful chorus. We didn't just die, we didn't just suffer, we weren't only extinguished. My ancestors plead with me to remember. We laughed, we worked hard, we danced. I hear them saying, please don't just remember how we died, how we hid, how we suffered, how we were extinguished, how we fled in the night and survived, but what died in us to escape and live. Remember our songs, remember our music. I'll continue on a little later. I'm noticing Ariel is trying to get on, and I would love to hear from you. Lisa is a dear old friend, and the work you do feels so relevant for this specific topic of metabolizing the grief. I know it's bringing up a lot for me. I'm feeling it in you as well. So maybe you can just introduce yourself as I deal with the technology of getting Ariel to join us as well. And yeah.
Sure. Hi. So I'm actually not currently working anymore I live in Tucson, Arizona. And for 3 years, when I first moved here, I was working at the Jewish History Museum and Holocaust History Center, which is a local, amazing resource here in this somewhat small but very vibrant Jewish community, and has really reached out to build bridges really throughout the whole of the local Tucson community, well beyond the Jewish community. So the history museum is located in the original synagogue, the first synagogue in Arizona, and it was a history museum that just focused on like Southwestern Jewish history. And about 4 years ago, they realized a dream of the local Holocaust survivors to build a Holocaust History Center, and that happened on the same campus, and it really expanded the reach of that institution. And it turns out that there were quite a large number of Holocaust survivors that ended up living here in this little town. And so this history center really focused on their stories. But then it also zoomed way out to talk about genocide in general and human rights violations across the globe. So it's a really powerful center. So I spent 3 years spending a lot of time with the local survivors, hearing their stories both in person and also hearing the loop of their testimonial that was in our museum, and also connecting it to different contemporary human rights issues that we had in our gallery for contemporary human rights, which changed every year, but they were all very, they were happening as we were looking at the exhibits, and teaching them to kids. So the museum right now is doing a virtual Yom Hashoah commemoration by having the long versions of all of those testimonials playing throughout the day, as well as being peppered by real-time commentary. So I've been sort of tuning in on and off and listening in on the longer versions of the testimonies that I haven't heard from people that I know well, that I've spent time with. And it just reminded me that so many points during these last few weeks that I've been kind of embodying those friends who lived through those traumas, and not embodying them, but like feeling like, what would Anik do, or what did Anik's mom do, and what did Walter think, you know, what would he think about what I need to do right now to take care of my family. And that those moments when, if my mother had done this, then this would have happened, but she did this. And am I that smart mother that's making the right decisions right now so that my family will be safe? And that keeps coming up for me. Now, I also am having so many things of Ray's poem totally resonated with me. And one of the things is guilt, because I'm going into that trauma mode very often, like really equating, like, are we at which stage, what year are we in? Are we in 1937? Are we in 1938? Like, where are we exactly on the timeline? I keep going there, but yet I'm fine, and I have an abundance of resources, and I feel guilty about that. And I'm thinking, I should probably find someone who needs this item that I have in my house, but I don't really need. But what if I need it? What if it comes out? Oh, what if I need it?
Right.
Those are sort of the things that keep coming up for me, having steeped myself in that history for the last few years.
Thank you. First of all, it's so good to see you. And actually, like, I'm like, even though we're far away, Lisa's moved away and I've moved out of Oakland and all of that. So just acknowledging that. I'm also gonna unmute Ariel, who has joined us. Or maybe you can, here we go. And I also just want to, oh, you're unmuted, Ariel.
Hi, Joti.
And I just,
so good to see you too. And Ariel was actually at the museum in Tucson last year. Workshop, an incredible workshop.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa, what you're talking to feels so relevant, like somebody who's immersed themselves in the testimonials and in the storylines, and both like accessing their strength, right? Which is like, I don't know if I hit on it, but Ray, I gave you the abridged version, so I don't remember exactly what I shared, but Ray definitely talks about that further on in her poem, is just, accessing that, that capacity that our people had at that time. And then there's also that guilt, and that's also something that it feels really important to be talking about, because as trauma is really getting kicked up for so many of us at this time, it feels important to remember that the way I've understood it is like, there's a benevolence to our ancestors, whether they were perfect or not, no matter what they've gone through, there's a benevolence that they have. And there's like a belief that I walk with, is that they actually want the best for us. And those ones who passed before us, as somebody who is a direct descendant, like my grandfather was in the Holocaust, like I felt his joy at me being able to live a life that was not of the Holocaust. And I think that there's this thing that happens when we move into trauma state, where we actually think we are experiencing what those people experienced. And so especially when we have it in our DNA and in our own system, right? Like for me, it's 2 generations away. It's so easy to like be in that mode. Like I did an NLP session like a couple months back, and I was working on a totally separate topic. I was working on my relationship to money. And before I knew it, I was seeing my grandparents and they were running and being beaten. And my whole relationship to money was about running and surviving. And like it was that same mode that came from that experience. And like, whether we're conscious of it or not, there's a way that so many of us are like, both like this Jewish guilt that we have of like, oh, we got to remember, right? We got to remember, there's the Jewish star, got to remember, right? There's both that kind of sense, and there's also this internal DNA. And so like how, like you were saying, of like, you're a mom, you got to survive, you got to like, and we're not actually in the Holocaust. Like, yes, we're experiencing COVID and this is a trauma, but this is all very different. So I want to leave that open to if Lisa or Ariel, if one of you want to talk about that or riff off of it, you're welcome to.
I do want to build on what you're saying. I feel like I've been having just really intense nighttime dreams in relations to the Holocaust narrative, in relation to Jewish identity. And I do think that we're getting re-triggered and re-stimulized. And I also think we're not the only population of people. I think all marginalized people, especially Black people, Indigenous people, LGBTQ community, I think there's a lot of re-stimulus happening. I was thinking about how this also feels very connected to HIV crisis and AIDS crisis, and that stimulation of that trauma that the queer community lived through, and just really realizing that any marginalized community that's been living through trauma, this is just an additional trauma to that. And it's both re-triggering and also like current trauma that's actually happening that is very real. So yeah, these are definitely very intense, very different times.
Thank
Yeah, I
you.
appreciate you bringing in, the many different communities that have the different kinds of traumas that are being stimulated and triggered by this moment. I think just the uncertainty across the board. And also I was thinking about it today, like I feel, so privileged with my life. And, all the struggles and, ultimately on a material plane, I feel very privileged. And yet, and I was thinking about it, that I think that I don't have my muscle so strong right at this moment for like having everything pulled away, and that it actually falls. I feel like the fall is it's a different like quality of fall. The fear of losing it, losing the comfort and the having enough food to eat and having a place to live. And I go there with this, even though, right, that's not coming up down the pike right now for me, but if that's where I'm going immediately. To bring it back to the very personal.
Yeah.
I mean, I also think there's this really intense piece around shelter in place, and just really, every day I'm thinking to myself about people during that time that had to shelter in place, in terms of hiding in people's attics or hiding in root cellars, or that the level of intense hiding and not being able to leave that hiding spot. And I think there's like the remembering of that shelter in place kind of, there's like a similarity. Obviously it's incredibly different. Like the real reality is I'm in my house, I'm with all my amazing friends that I live with, my housemates, I have food, I have a bed. Like it's very, very different from the ancestors that hid in attics and root cellars and didn't have anything and didn't have food. But I think there's a connection, or there's some part of the brain that like remembers that. And I also think for myself, every day I'm giving gratitude that I'm not in that situation. And I sit, I've been sitting with my housemates, and we've been doing Shabbat every Friday night in a way that we really never have before. And one of the things that we talk about is what the ancestors lived through versus what we are living through, and kind of reminding ourselves and giving ourselves gratitude.
Yeah.
It's beautiful what you're saying. I feel like I was reading part of Ray's poem, and I want to read a little bit more because I think there's just such brilliance in Ray's writing, and the way she really kind of metabolizes all of this. So I'm just going to read a couple more pieces that relate directly to what you're saying. The opposite of genocide is not just surviving, not just tolerance. It is kindness, acceptance, love, justice, solidarity. Observing Yom HaShoah is not only remembering the 6 million Jews, it's remembering the 11 million, our ancestors who were queer, Roma, Catholic, Baha'i, African, disabled ancestors who were among the first to be killed by the Nazis. We remember you. African and Asian residents of Nazi Germany, Soviet civilians and POWs, and Poles and Serbs, people who spoke Esperanto, and sex workers, and people struggling from addiction, and anarchists, and people who traveled too much and therefore were thought to have too much exposure to foreign ideas and killed for it. We remember you. Resistance fighters like her grandfather, and civilian activists like the White Rose Brigade. We remember you. April 19th, 2020 was the 75th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising in Poland, April 19th, 1943. The uprising sparked the imagination of Jews in France who organized Jews, Muslims, Christians to fight fascism and offer mutual aid and help Jews get into hiding. Here we are on April 19th, 2020, fighting fascism and offering collective care, countering white supremacists, doing anti-physical distancing demos in our cities as we protect each other from a virus made genocidal because of how structures of domination put certain already targeted people, Indigenous, Black, Brown, undocumented, poor, disabled, more at risk of sickness and death. There's a lot to say here, but yeah, one of the things she goes on to say is let's show up for, because what we're doing right now is we're not just remembering, you know, all that went wrong, but we're remembering those songs, we're remembering the creativity, we're remembering the resilience and the capacity that we now have in our system, because our ancestors went through this, because so many people in our Jewish race went through this experience, that instead of turning it into the victim mentality, let's recognize what we can show up for, which is some of what you spoke of, and she talks about a little bit more, and she talks about those with compromised immune systems, disabilities, the elderly, the precariously employed, those in prisons and detention centers, immigrants, those who are homeless, refugees from war, those who suffer from environmental injustice, those facing martial law and brutal repression during this pandemic, those on other margins of social care, and those already battling poverty, war, and occupation. Let's protect those on the front lines of this health crisis: the nurses, doctors, healthcare providers, grocery store clerks, food service employees, sanitation workers, and so many more. And there's so much more that she wrote, but I'm curious if y'all have anything to say based on Ray's beautiful words.
I feel like that poem is so powerful. It says,
Yes,
it really just says everything that needs to be said at this time.
We're done. Now,
and I really relate to it. I relate to what's being said. And I also have been thinking, you know, to myself that one of the things that this is reminding me of is I was in a Holocaust museum with a dear friend of mine who, you know, had lost a lot of relatives in Auschwitz, and we were, you know, like hearing his stories and like hearing their stories through listening to him and like actually trying to find their names in the museum. And one of the things I said was, wow, our ancestors must have done something right for us to be here. And then a lot of what's happening. And then he responded saying, or maybe some of them did some things that were wrong. And what he meant by that was like how your ethics have to get compromised when you are forced into intense, oppressive, traumatic situations. Like, you know, he was like saying like maybe some of his ancestors did have to steal food or did have to do things that they never would imagine doing. And I've been thinking how COVID-19 is placing people in situations that they never imagined, and it like changes people's behavior, forces people to act differently. And what does it mean to try to stay in a way that's like thinking about the whole collective, thinking about collective liberation, thinking about the people who are the most marginalized? What are the ways that we can stay being helpful, and what are the ways that when we're forced into a scarcity model, people act from a place of like just being able to think of themselves or their family?
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah, that really resonates.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the daily gratitudes that you mentioned, for me, they are, I think I need more than that to pull me out of that kind of going into fear and scarcity mode. But they definitely help. And I think that the parenting thing makes me, it's like, I feel so like I want to do the right thing by my kids. It's like if it were just me, I feel like I could be more available in the bigger picture for others, and I just feel so I don't know how to balance that personally. Like that's a struggle for me, because I fear for them.
Right. And so because you fear for them, what is it that
I'm just like sort of second guessing every decision I make from a historical perspective, you know, like I'm thinking about it as if I'm looking back on it. Like, was this the right call? You know, I feel like now it's a little bit less, but in the beginning of this whole period, there was a lot of anxiety and fear that, because it was so totally unknown. And, you know, are we like, is this it? Like, no going out again forever? You know, do I have what my kids need to stay healthy and safe and well fed and nourished and entertained? And, you know, so I feel like just so focused on just keeping that together that it's just taking all of my energy.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I feel like that's important to acknowledge. Like, it feels like in this place of metabolizing the grief is also like a big part is just accepting that it's actually a part of what's happening. Is that like kind of like what Ariel was just talking about, of like, we can't be perfect during these times of pandemics and these times of crisis. Like, sometimes we really can just do what we can do. Like, Yari was on the show last week and he did this great song about, I can't change the world, but I can change my child's diaper. And I just found it so refreshing to remember that. And like, for each of us to remember that we're actually, you know, doing what it is that we can be doing, just in terms of like, how do we turn this wheel in a different way, instead of it being this like, you know, I feel like I grew up like, you know, I look at Waldorf education, right? And they don't teach kids about like traumatic things until they're in like junior high school. I remember doing Yom HaShoah probably in first grade or kindergarten. Right. Like, I went to Jewish schools. Like, I was told these stories. I was shown these things, and the imprint that makes on a young person's mind and how that affects us. So how do we get to start to turn these wheels in a different way? And one of the things that, you know, like, how do we actually accept the fact of like getting out of that guilt of like, wait, I have to change the world right now, right? And just actually acknowledging like, actually all I can do right now is, like you're saying, Lisa, is like protect my family and like, you know, do what's being asked of me, or even more, because that's what feels right. Like, just kind of claiming it and owning it, especially during this time in the Sphira, as we're counting, you know, we're, for people who don't know, we're counting the Omer. It's like this time of Gevura, where this time of strength and boundaries, it's a whole complex thing, but essentially that's what this week is this time of boundaries, and to like actually accept like, this is what I'm capable of. Like,
I'm barging into your boundary to tell you that I think I'm burning something. I have to go turn it off.
Go do it. I'm gonna let you go do it, and she could come back or not. Anyways, let me tell you, Ariel, I mean, I don't mean that in any wrong way. I just mean it in the way of like, I whatever.
Yeah. I did. I burned about. I could have burned the whole house down.
Thank God you didn't burn the house down. I feel like, Joti, I feel like what you're talking about is really intergenerational trauma. How we pass down our trauma, how what are the stories that we need to share so that we understand our collective histories, and then what is the intergenerational trauma that happens whether you share the stories or not, just even how our DNA changes, and also what happens when you hear these stories, when your you know, ancestors lived through this. I guess what I've been thinking of too is like, what does it mean for us now? Like, what are we mapping onto our bodies now in COVID-19? And especially for you, Lisa, like having kids, like what story are you going to tell them? Are they going to tell their kids? Like, you know, what about?
Well, I have a 14-year-old and an 8-year-old. So my 14-year-old knows more than me because he's way more media savvy.
How'd they get that old?
No.
I used to babysit her kids. They were original Adventure Care kids.
I remember your kids. The original. We still have some of that junk you picked up. No, I'm just kidding. We don't actually. But we did for a long time.
That's why you moved, to get rid of the junk.
We had to move to get rid of it. But anyway, so he's kind of on his own knowledge journey, but I've been trying to keep it on the DL a little bit around the littler one. I'm peeking around to see if she's here. Trying not to get too deep into the fear, too deep into the big picture. But we haven't been careful enough, because we can't help but talk about it.
Right.
And she hears it, and she is such a sensitive being. She was having so much fear in her body at the very beginning of this. She was panicked about her grandparents. She was so scared that something was going to happen to them. And so I'm just doing a lot of tending of feelings, and we've ditched all requirements on school and any kind of online schooling in favor of just tending the heart, because that's what she really needs right now, because she feels it.
Yeah.
And I know when I worked at the Holocaust History Center, we didn't work with students under sixth grade. Sixth grade was the youngest. We preferred it to be seventh, but we wouldn't work with younger students in that center. And if they came to visit, we wouldn't even bring them in there. We would only stay on the other side of the campus. And I think that's important. And in terms of like my 8-year-old with talking about the Holocaust, it's been barely. I've been really protective, even though she also has gone to a Jewish day school. They don't do too much of it. She was still young. But I've really protected her from it. I think the longer you can wait.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Lisa, I want to protect you from the next part of the show.
Uh-oh.
Is this where we take like a sharp left-hand turn?
Okay, I love
we
you
might
guys
turn a little bit.
so much. I love you.
I love you so much.
I'm
Your
loving your
insight.
show, though. I do watch it, even though you wouldn't want me to be on it. I love you.
I love you so
I love you so
much.
much. I'm so glad you were on the show. It's so rad.
That was so
It's
exciting.
so beautiful
It's
to
so good to see you.
Oh,
Yeah.
and I really appreciate your insight and the background that you're walking with and the way you're taking care of your kids. You're such a good mama. I miss you. I miss your food.
Oh, I just want to say one last thing about this connection. I'm sorry to butt in before you turn left.
Do it. That's what the Joti show's about.
That's all we do is interrupt.
I just want to share one cool thing that our local museum is doing.
Yeah.
They're based on the learning that they did from the Ringelblum archive, which was a collection of stories and everything that people were collecting in the Warsaw Ghetto during the war.
Yeah.
And basically all of these little snippets, it was an organized archive of collecting people's journals and recipes and songs, and they were basically buried under the ghetto in milk jugs and excavated after the war, and not all of them were found. But the museum, based on that legacy, is right now collecting people's stories from the Jewish community or from the community at large. And they have a hotline that you can call. There's a prompt every day, and just share what's happening for you during this time of COVID. So they're just trying to collect the stories of the community's experience of this particular moment in history.
What's the name of maybe I could send people to the website. What I could write.
Yeah, it's jewishhistorymuseum.org.
jewishhistorymuseum.org. And I want to say, before you get off, you're getting a lot of love. Susanna, Ari, so many people. And they all love you too, Trixie. And Susanna sends kisses and hugs to the whole mishpacha. And Jen was on earlier.
Oh my God. I didn't even do my hair for this.
Oh, look,
you look perfect.
Yeah, we've been working on our hair for days.
I dyed it blue and I grew it out just for this.
Exactly. And we have another guest coming on soon. So I'm going to say shalom. I'll send you a prize. I don't know what it is. It's going to be a Metabolize Your Grief into Beauty, brought to you by Day Shokrit.
Love it. Oh, that sounds good to me.
I know. He doesn't know yet, but
now he's a sponsor. He's a sponsor for the Joti and Ariel show. He doesn't know, but he just became a sponsor.
Oh my God, Sarah Nicoletti is on here. She sends her love. And Shu sends her love. I didn't even know she looked at Facebook.
The love test.
Oh my God, it's such a love fest. I love you so much.
Love
and
you
thank
guys
you
too.
Love you,
Thanks for having me.
Sei gesund.
You too. I'm not going to listen to the rest. Don't worry. You can say whatever you want.
I even told my mother, I'm like, Mom, you shouldn't watch this one. Whatever
I'm
you
ready for
do.
this candle,
I'll
Joti.
tune
What
out.
happens
Exactly.
next?
You're
Tune out.
safe. You're safe. The mama's leaving the room. Bye.
Exactly. Exactly. Thanks. I love you, Lisa. Oh my God. Look
That
at
was
that.
so beautiful and powerful, Joti.
I know. Well, look, it takes a community to be beautiful and powerful. Look, they were all talking to each other on the chat line. Miriam Rubin even told Day that I offered his things to everybody for free.
That's what happens when you're sponsoring.
Well, one of the things I want to say, Ariel,
Yeah.
is that what feels important for us to like, one of the ways to metabolize grief is Jewish humor. Like, think about it, right? From the Holocaust came the Borscht Belt. From the Borscht Belt came people like Jackie Mason, and then all the people after, like, right? Like Seinfeld, all those people, they came out of they respected the Borscht Belt, you know, people, and even like Hollywood came because, you know, it was like all of this energy that had to move and needed to get metabolized, right? So it's humor, even though it's sometimes scary for people to touch into that and to have the braveness of like, oh, can I actually even laugh now? Is that okay? And people feel that. What'd you say? I wasn't listening.
That is so important.
It is so important. And on that note, I really have like a racy thing that I want to share, and it feels really you know, I feel really mixed about it. I just want to say that. And it also feels important. And okay. Oh, wait, I never put the Zoom info in the comments. That's a good point. Nobody could actually call in. People, no wonder the people aren't calling in. So I have something racy, but before that, why don't you share a little bit more about humor and metabolizing grief as I send Susanna the.
I'm just gonna do a commercial break for a second.
Yeah,
I have a commercial break right here. So the commercial break is in addition to this being, I just want you to know what time it is. A little 4:20 time. Just a commercial break to acknowledge that this is also a holiday. It's also 4:20.
Did he die? Did he die? I die. Well, that's the way we metabolize the grief, right?
Yeah, I just wanted everyone to, you know, be able to really acknowledge this holiday as well. There's multiple things happening. You know, yesterday was Bicycle Day, the psychedelic experience of people discovering LSD. Here we are, 4:20, the day later, celebrating. So
okay, I just have to say, I saw you on that. I skipped everybody except for you. And I even found the exact time that you were going to be on there. And I listened to you on that big, long meeting about Spore. And I think there were some brilliant things. So maybe you could talk to us a little bit as a new expert on psychedelics, because you're on the Spore thing with like people like Alex Gray. So now you're definitely the most qualified of all of us.
yes, it's like you and I, we now are Generation Next. We are standing in the fine line of all the Jewish ancestry and all the Jewish comics. We're just the up and coming. And yes, also here we are looking so beautiful.
Gorgeous.
We look gorgeous, you and I. It's amazing.
I know. So tell us a little bit about how psychedelics could help metabolize grief.
Yeah, well, I actually think that psychedelics help people heal. You can actually heal trauma and PTSD with psychedelics. They're doing these amazing trial studies right now with MDMA. And
I'm doing one right now on myself. What planet are we on? Just kidding. Go on.
You're doing a little. Is that a tincture you have? What's going on in that cup?
Oh yeah, hold on. Let me take some more.
What is it? What do you got there?
It's a mixture of THC, CBD, and LSD with a little DMT.
That's perfect.
Yeah, I'm on a healing journey called the Joti Show, and you're all just watching me. Go on.
And I'm on a.
Oh, and I forgot, it's a Joti and Ariel show. It just
hello. What about me? What about my needs, Joti?
Listen, you came on late, okay? I had the whole spiel already set. I've been studying for hours. And you want me to change the name to the Joti and Ariel show. Yes. I love it, but you haven't proven yourself yet. Anyways, go on.
That is Mashugana. You're totally Mashugana. It's obviously both of our shows. People need it to be us. Together, we're an amazing comic duo.
Listen, I'm sorry. It wasn't me that spoke. It was the THC, CBD,
THC. I don't know. That excuse does not always go. Remember when like Roseanne Barr said it was just the Ambien? I don't think you can use excuses like that.
Oh my
So okay, yeah, we're celebrating here 420. We're acknowledging that there's, you know, it's like I run an amazing workshop called Drugs, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, because I think these things can be all those things. You can use it for healing, you can use it as medicine, you can use it, for multiple reasons. You can also abuse medicine, and that's when you get into the drugs, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I always like keeping it real on all levels, sharing both the amazing pieces and also sharing about how it's not for everyone, and it's definitely can be a hardship too.
Well, then you definitely shouldn't try my water. But what I do want to say is, no, honestly, I'm sober. But I do want to say that the distinction between drugs and medicine is that, are you using it to escape, or are you using it to heal and to reveal things? And there's a lot of distinctions between drugs and medicine, and that's not, I don't have a PhD in that yet. I'm studying during COVID.
Yeah, I'm in that right now. That's what you're doing with your COVID. That's your COVID-19 research project.
Exactly. And but honestly, I do really I really I'm really grateful for this day, for 420. It's also Yoti's birthday.
Yeah, whose birthday?
Yoti, my dog. Oh my god.
I'm very prepared for this.
Oh my god, you are amazing. You see, I think we do have to call it the Ariel and Joti show.
Yeah, what's happening? I told you.
Oh my god. Sorry, while we're laughing, somebody's waiting to come on the line.
Get them on the line.
Because one of the things that's important to share is a way that we metabolize grief during Purim. And I'm going to introduce you to the one and only. Her name is Susanna Stossman. She's coffee and sassy and all sorts of things.
I think the best part is you have your ag innovations up right now.
Right? I know, she's advertising her work.
I don't know if that's what you mean to have up. This is a little risque for the work.
So Susanna, welcome. Here we are, metabolizing Jewish trauma through 420 and other substances. Just kidding. And talking about that, we had a very powerful experience before we were all in place, and we were all out of place and displaced in the holiday called Purim, which comes right before COVID. Now it's Purim. COVID
Purim was actually the last big thing I did. That was the last time I was in big community with Purim.
Right, you had a fun time too. And we on the West Coast had some ideas. Maybe Susanna, you could share a little bit about our risque, crazy idea that was actually brilliant and crazy all at the same time.
Yes. Well, thank y'all.
Sorry, that's all the time we have for today.
Okay, great. See you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Right. We're doing fabulous. No, y'all, look, it's almost like we're in the same room here. I miss you, Ariel.
I miss you.
Dolly misses you too. And Miriam Rubin sends a love.
Aw.
All right, but we do have a brief time. Tell us the long story short.
Okay, we're on the clock here. It's way past 4:20. We're late.
Oh, our clock stopped working when we started.
Stopped working on Purim. So the seed was planted like almost a year ago or something. Riva came up with the idea when the series finale came out to Transparent. And if you don't know Transparent, it's an Amazon Prime show that went on for like 5 seasons or something. But the last season is just 1 episode. It's an epic episode. They all of a sudden switched into musical theater format, and it's like a movie. And the whole show is really plays with and explores the issues you're talking about in a lot of ways. Also through the lens of queer and trans storyline, and how others who are.
We don't really get to hear about Transparent. It's a wonderful show if you want to watch.
It's a good show.
Look on Amazon Prime. What I was going to talk about Purim and
but I think it's important to set that up. Like, so the finale comes from that, and they do this whole get down at the end that takes place essentially at a Jewish funeral.
No, it's not. It's you're right. It's also a bat mitzvah though at the same time.
No,
what they say.
I don't think we should give too much information.
Okay, we won't give too much away. Basically, the idea was planted, and I was like,
the song is powerful.
The song is powerful. I was like, I'm gonna take it and run with it, because you know what, like, I think Joti, you understand this very deeply, that I tend to live in the world of needing to be the catalyst within my own family to heal a lot of the shit that I've been given.
Well, on that note, I'm going to just share the screen for 1 minute.
And now you're going to just show it? That's the intro? Okay, fine. Show
Keep
it.
on talking.
This is all about me healing my drama. Show the video.
Listen, let's get real, okay? So this is you healing your trauma. We don't have
It
to hear
is.
all of the
That's
details.
So this was well, let me just
Good.
set it up. So this was on Purim. This was during the Megillah reading, which was god awful boring. Sorry, not
In
sorry.
English. All right.
And Joti was really ready to hit play from the very start, but we had to like hold her down. And then we did a full freaking flash mob. So show it.
All right,
Yeah.
I'm sharing it. Let's
Flip.
see. I'm doing it. I'm pressing share. And I'm pressing play. Hopefully it works together.
Turn on the full screen, Jotes.
This is all your personal text messages that we're looking
Yeah,
at.
Joti, we're seeing your personal text messages.
I don't know how to do it.
Oh my
Okay,
god,
click
this is
that little
amazing.
arrow. Yep, you got it.
Okay.
If you need to dial anyone's number, here's their numbers.
All right.
Yeah, that's great.
Am I supposed to call the
If
Holocaust?
you want some
Museum?
advice, just pick any number on Joti's screen right now and just dial it right now. You'll get one of our good friends. We'll give you advice.
That's my number right there.
Oh my God. Well, now you get to continue.
Never
to talk
mind
about-
the privacy. Never mind.
Okay.
There you go.
I
There
think
you go.
you could start it, I don't know, or whatever. You do
Joti,
whatever you want.
You gotta
It's
move
only-
this.
It's cut off though, Joti.
You gotta move the screen. Move the screen over.
Put it on full screen.
Technical
Is it
difficulty.
working?
Yes, but you have to put it on full screen. You have to start it
Amazing.
over and bring the sound up.
Let me try.
Oh my god, this is so good.
So we rehearsed for like 2 days before this. We didn't think it was gonna happen, but we really pulled it together, and you can't really tell what the hell is going on right now. But Joti will figure that out. We'll start it back over again.
No, it's
I
fine.
did not see it coming at all. Everything was really quiet and calm from the Megillah reading. It was like you could hear a fly, and then all of a sudden, it's a flash mob, but you don't really know what's happening right now.
I'm gonna stop the share. I'm gonna stop the share for a minute because some of the words are a little mashuga. And are we back? Are we back?
I think we're back. That was
Susanna.
also amazing because people now have a lot of your friends' phone numbers.
Yeah.
Listen, we're all learning technology. We gotta be kind to each other.
Yeah.
Suze, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you know that's part of the show.
You've never said sorry before for that. Why would you say
Sorry,
it
not sorry.
Because this time I felt like I insulted you. So I
Huh.
wanted to say sorry.
now?
And I think that's part of metabolizing our grief is being willing to say sorry.
I think it's being willing to say sorry, and I think it's being willing to even laugh through the tears.
Yeah.
Because you know, there's a lot of things. I mean, Judaism has saved my life in many ways and continues to feed my spirit in such deep ways. And there are many ways that I see the playing out of a similar trauma story over and over again. You know, I not to offend anyone, but the Megillah reading, you know, the story of Purim is a story of, disaster averted in many ways, but it's also a story of killing that perpetuates violence onto others who would do violence, right? And so I felt like that wasn't necessarily the centerpiece that I wanted to hold for that day of turning things upside down. If we're going to turn things upside down, let's really turn things upside down and look at what it would look like to have a world where like we're throwing flowers instead of bombs, you know?
Yeah, I think it's good what you're saying. And I also am curious, we have another caller who's coming in a moment. So before we bring that caller in, is there some advice that you could share about the ways that you metabolize grief?
Yeah. Well, I definitely felt like the song and dance of that piece was a beautiful way to metabolize that grief. And I always feel like art is a beautiful way to metabolize grief. And usually, though, before I can get to that point of singing or of dancing with like full smile and glow, I have to go into that darkness and into the tears and into the rage, because honestly there's a lot of rage that our society has perpetuated so much violence. Like my body feels that sense of violence deep within its cells, you know, and layered with fear and layered with the sense of no self-worth and all of that stuff. Yeah. And so you got to work your way down through those layers, and to do that you really got to give yourself permission to feel what you're feeling. It might sound simple, and it is actually, but it doesn't always feel easy. Yeah. So that's what I would say.
Thank you, Suze. Thank you for the way that you metabolize your grief. I really love you and appreciate your willingness to continue to do that. And as a result, to just have this adaptability and capacity to meet these times and everything that's inside of it. So blessings to your heart and your life. I love you.
Love you too. Love you. Love you both so much. Keep up the good work.
Thanks. Tali's coming on.
Yes, it's like the best of the Mojave right now.
Oh my God, it is. It's the best. And imagine
the show. Forget about Joti and Ariel. It's just the best of the Mojave.
The best of the Mojave. The best of the Mojave.
All the way from Canada. Holy shit.
Exactly. Imagine that Lisa Schachter Brooks had been in the Mojave. We would not have eaten snickerdoodles. We would have had really good food.
We would have.
Right? Tali Weinberg.
Oh my God! All the way from Canada.
You're frozen. There you are.
Hey! From Canada. Holy cow!
I like this shirt on you.
Thank you.
Nice.
Yeah, a little pink up. It's like, this is amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
You look fantastic.
So do you. You look amazing.
Fabulous.
You know what? I needed to get in on this.
Yes, you do.
I even kind of like I expedited my walk in the park so that I could get home before my battery. Like, I was like, I got to get in on this. This is important. Joti, you are such a holy sister. You are you're a reverend. You're a visionary.
And so's Ariel. This is the Joti and Ariel show.
And I really want to support it being the Joti and Ariel show. I think you two, listen, you need each other. You love each other. You two are good for the world.
Amazing. We're together.
And Tali, I mean, I just want to say Tali is brilliant, and she's got this permaculture resiliency thing. Thousands of people are watching it and going there on a daily level, on a daily thing, because she is an incredible permaculturist. But not only that, she's a gatherer and community metabolizer, and bringing all of these wise people together to teach people how to like grow gardens right now. So I would definitely like to put on a link. Oh my God, I'm going to put on a link. And I also want to say the other thing I'm just going to mention is that this is an offering, and so much of what so many of us are doing right now is an offering. And so I'm just going to put on a virtual tip jar, and anything that I get tipped, I'll give to all of you. If I get $1, you get 25 cents. If I get 500, I get 490, you get 5, and you get 5.
Wait a minute.
Wow.
Yeah, so generous. You're just so generous.
Well, Day is cursing and talking about the Mojave.
Oh, Day, I thought you were our sponsor. What happened? I thought,
I don't know. Yeah, I think because you heard what he said. It's crazy. So he said some relevant things, but unfortunately I can't find them anymore. That's what happens. So anyways, if you want to say what you wanted to say, Day, you should copy and paste it. No, of course you're not chopped liver, Susanna. You get your 50 cents. Once you contribute $1, I'll give you 50 cents. So, anyways, Tali, I'm so glad that this rung true with you, because you have such wisdom to share. So please,
I mean, I don't know if I have wisdom to share or I have
That's the beginning of a wise person speaking there. I don't think I have wisdom to share.
I mean, I have a story to share. I have a perspective to share. No, but really, I feel like irreverently reverent, but I actually feel more reverent, and I don't have a wig, so I'm just gonna give it to you straight. But
Reverence is important.
it's all important. It's all
Like a wig. This is my real hair.
So's these toothpicks, by the way. They're very important.
You know, I could do without the extra plastic, but that's
That's
just
true. You see permaculture.
exactly. It's a typical thing that I would say about that. What do I want to say? I want to just say a couple of things. This is how I feel about these times as far as like how it's running through my body.
Yeah.
Meaning we're in a like larger society level emergency type situation, however you want to break it down. And as far as how the ancestral memory runs through my body. One thing is, I think you saw my post earlier this week where I was like really lamenting that I was feeling alone and like away from my tribe.
Uh-huh.
And I think the reason why that's striking so intensely is it hooks into this older feeling, like not just an older feeling, an ancient Jewish experience that when shit hits the fan, and that's, I think, an experience that we know extremely well because it happens. It happens to all people, but like we get it in our own Jewish way with our own Jewish framework. But when it happens, we come together and we go through the storm hunkered together.
Yeah.
And there's something that like my experience, because I'm way the fuck up in Canada and I'm like living by myself and I'm really kind of like hunkering the storm by myself, that has been freaking out because my system's been like, there's a storm coming. Where's the village? Like, this is how we know to do this.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I want to say about like how it's coming through my system. Another thing I want to say about my experience going through this is, and I don't know if you guys are going to relate to this, but also I just want to presence, I also have like grandparents who survived the Holocaust that I was very, very close with growing up in Winnipeg, and also lost family on all sides. But it's like this weird thing where when things are like kind of just chugging along as normal, like kind of like normal society and everything's sort of like how we would call it status quo and safe, and we're going around our business. But like there's these moments of like emergency, and I think we're in one now. And the last one for me, at least, was going through the fires this past fall in Sonoma County. And then the last one before that was 2 years before that, the fires again in Santa Rosa, and being in that area. There's something that happens when there's like a higher level emergency situation where I feel personally like I snap into a sense of like purpose, meaning, and like, it's like I have this feeling where it's like, oh, I feel like myself. It's like I know myself. I know that part of myself. I know it, and I feel like myself when there's like a little bit of like crisis. And then it's like I know how to function almost like better, easier. And then we as a collective, we like snap into like mode where we have cohesion, we have unity consciousness, and we go through like crisis energy together. And it's almost like I know myself better in some ways when these things are happening than when they're not. And I don't know if you resonate with that or that's something that you can relate to, but it's something that I've been noticing between these last 3 experiences. There's like this know-how. There is a know-how.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how you experience it, Ariel, but I definitely like, especially initially, there's something in me that kind of, as somebody who's been a psychedelic warrior, as somebody who's like, who actually really loves the liminal space, there's something that when these traumas come, when these, I won't call them traumas, but when these crises that take us out of our norm start happening, there's something that actually like wakes up and comes online. Like for me, it's this immediacy of like, oh, like I have to, like all those times that people have been speaking of, like it's now and I need to show up fully. Which I think both creates like an immediacy of like, okay, how can I show up? Like the Joti show came from that, of like, or like I'm sure the permaculture resiliency came from that. You know, there's definitely like an immediacy of like, you know, the way that Callisto Pinkola Estes speaks about it is like, we are needed and that's all we know. And there's something about that that feels really beautiful and bountiful in my system and really activates all those deeper dreams. And then I think there's also something inside of that, especially as you know, you're experiencing this alone, right? And people are kind of separated from their tribes, from their people. There's also inside of that you know, also reactivation of trauma that comes up, and reactivation of like core stuff that starts to happen. And how do we also get to, you know, like deal with that? Because I know like there'll be this like, oh yeah, I can do this, right? That initial pump that I know I will feel, and then I'll be like, oh my God, I'm not ready, or I'm not enough. It's like this big outward burst, and then it's like, whoa, you know, and just kind of that fluctuation of energy that then is like, you know, kind of the way that Ray talks about it in the continuation of her poem is she talks about transcending trauma. I want to call it transmuting trauma, because that actually works more in my system. It's not just about getting above it, it's about utilizing it. And she talks about noticing the patterns and then deciding to weave a new stitch, starting a new habit, prepare a new table, cast a new spell. And then it's also saying the names and not numbing out to the numbers, like Anne Frank and Eddie Hillesum and all the other names, and remembering them. And so just this idea that she talks about, Ray, is that this Holocaust Memorial Day let us not only grieve for the millions murdered in the brutal Holocaust, but also call on the resourcefulness, resilience, and deep wisdom that got our people through to not only survive, but thrive. And let this resilience support us as we travel through this narrow place, this Mitzrayim of the pandemic. And I think it's a little after 6. Ariel Vagosin, is there anything you wanted to share before I go on to a closing prayer?
Just to really say that I do really resonate with the idea of this is the time for the village to come together, and that even I think people who are in their houses by themselves, it's like this weird false separation that's happening, because we're actually super unified and super together. And even though you're in Canada in a different room and I'm in Berkeley over here, I still feel super connected to you, and actually even now more than ever. And it feels like the way we're moving actually impacts people in a way different way than it ever has before. The kind of conversations I'm having with my housemates, I've never had to have conversations with housemates like this before, right? It's like every movement that I do radically affects the 6 people that I live with. And I think people are engaging in new forms of new dialogues and new ways of connecting, and whole new forms of communication are happening because of this, both the online communication, but also the kinds of things that we're sharing, the kinds of intimacy we're having in terms of like friends knowing so much about your life that they might not normally know. And I think people are really getting aware that this is a time to keep your levity and keep your joy, but also get really real and get really serious, and you know, talk to the people that matter most.
Yeah.
And Kelly, you have a little love note.
One last thing to say, if I may. Yeah,
you don't want the love note first and then you say it?
As you wish.
Okay.
I'm a guest in your Zoom.
All right. Emily just says that she's feeling you and loves you and loves your beauty.
One last thing to say, if I may. Yeah,
Well, clearly that one last thing really wants to be heard. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just to kind of like pair it to this group, this permaculture group, I'll try to be really succinct, but I feel like on a soul level, I got into food production because I had a very strong survival instinct that is linked to the Holocaust, and it links to like, we got to be able to make it. And this goes back many years. And in going on that journey, actually what started off as maybe a survival instinct turned into like a thrival thing, because I realized the thing that I was doing in order to learn to survive was the exact same thing that I would do to thrive, because it's like life itself and planting and beauty and community and all this stuff. And And like, it's no surprise that I just said that it's like, I know myself when we're in crisis, when so much of our holidays and our mythology and the stories that we tell are kind of like a remembrance of persecution. I mean, how many holidays are we remembering when we almost were persecuted? So much of the Jewish identity that we've inherited has been about crisis and like coming pretty close to annihilation or experiencing, you know, it to a certain extent. And it's no surprise then that that's inside of me and probably inside of a lot of us to try to survive. It's like how we know ourselves. We know ourselves to be able to go through crisis. So I want to just offer a prayer and then like pass you the prayer baton, Joti, because I know that you have a prayer in your heart to share. But I want to offer a prayer that like we come to know ourselves in a new way. We've known ourselves in a very particular way for, I mean, we can't even, time immemorial. But here we are, and there's more life, and there's more knowing of ourselves as not just a people who survived crisis, but a people who came to thrive by knowing that they belonged, by tending the earth, by knowing Pachamama, by knowing Mother Earth, you know, by knowing ourselves with joy and celebration and thriving. And so I want to just see the possibility that this, again, crisis also doubles as an opportunity for us to just keep writing the next chapter of the story. You know, the pen's in our hand now. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I want to say. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Tali. A man and a little woman. I mean, I think what you bring up feels really important, and there's curiosity in my system of, you know, like one of the presuppositions of NLP, of neuro-linguistic programming, is that we're all really doing the best we can, like at every moment, and at the same time, in order to move into that reality where we actually get to metabolize the grief, right? There's just curiosity of like, how do we fully do this, right? Like, how do we fully compost in this way that we bring out the deepest richness, so that it's that these times of survival aren't the only times that we get to like feel ourselves fully, but that kind of impetus that moves us into our highest self, like allows us to thrive not only in times of crisis, but when we touch into the new paradigm that we're going to be stepping into when COVID is no longer ruling our lives, right? There's going to be something new. And so, you know, just wanting to put that out there as a question of like, you know, how do we continue to metabolize and bring the beauty that we're bringing forth, and also not only survive but thrive when we get to the next stage. And I don't know if I'm even looking for an answer. It's more of like a sacred question, unless you guys have a specific answer that you've been. So on that note, I'd like to share a prayer that a teacher of mine shared with us, Nancy Eagle Spirit, and I'm just going to share what she wrote because it felt so beautiful. I'll share the parts that feel alive right now. So she just asked that all of the sacred beings hear these prayers, the elders and the children, as well as humanity in this world, and that she offers all of these sacred herbs of sage and cedar and cornmeal and tobacco and sweetgrass. Mother, Father, God, that faith will carry us in our hearts and give us the will to live healthy and wise. That my temple, my mind, body, and spirit is focused with faith, that this too shall pass, that we may open our eyes to see that we have the proper state of mind, of awareness in living in a world that is big enough for all, without racism, separation, hate, jealousy, discrimination, and irregardless of gender. I pray for the people to release their fears and pray hard, dance with joy, and listen to music while we clean our closets of our old life. Pray for the homeless who have no homes, for children who are still in cages. Open your hearts and minds and take a good look at your past and where you are at now. So when this is over, you can presently focus on where you are going tomorrow for your future. Make your life matter. Forgiveness to start a clean slate, and gratitude for the breath of life, so that we can continue to dance the dance around the tree of life. And I'd like to end with a song for the ancestors as we honor Yom Hashoah as the sun is setting and the Jewish day begins. Unless, Tali, you have a song to honor your ancestors. I'm just thinking of an old like Yiddish or Niggin or.
I just want to say for the record, I suck so hard at like conjuring nigunim on the spot.
Fine, then I'll do it. Unless you have something, Ariel.
That's not my forte. Singing's not my bag.
Okay, fine. I got it. I like your background change, Ariel. Just want to thank everybody for showing up. Thanks, Tali and Susanna and Lisa, and thank you, Ariel, for co-hosting the show with me. Ariel and I will be back next Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and you are all welcome to call in. We'll let you know the topic later. Unless you have ideas for the topic, then you should definitely.
You should write in with ideas for us.
Yeah, write in with ideas of what the topic should be. Maybe there's another holiday next Monday that I haven't figured out yet. Either way,
Ramadan's coming. We could do that.
Oh, great. And maybe Valentine's Day early, whatever it is. Let's all come together in collective consciousness to bless ourselves and our lives. And may we all feel good today and tomorrow and the next, and be healthy and happy. And we're going to say bye to Facebook. You want to say bye, guys?
Bye. We love you.
Bye. Be healthy. Bye.
This is the Joti Show.
The Joti and Ariel Show.
This is the Joti Show. We say what we don't know. Reverently irreverent. Shalom. And Ariel.